The acrid smoke of burning metal and flesh hung heavy in Xerion 7's thin atmosphere, turning the twin suns into pale orange smudges against the amber sky. Sergeant Alex Torres pressed his back against a collapsed support beam, listening to the distant crackle of energy weapons and the occasional rumble of artillery. The battle for the mining station had ended 3 hours ago, but the war's echoes still reverberated through the twisted corridors and shattered domes. "Torres, you copy?" Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled through his comm unit. "Copy, Lieutenant. Section 7 is clear. No survivors." Alex wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of dirt across his dark skin. "Move to Section 8. Intelligence thinks some Yavari might still be holed up there. Rules of engagement remain. Eliminate on sight. I know." Alex checked his medical kit one more time before shouldering his rifle. As the unit's medic, he carried death and healing in equal measure, though lately it felt like he'd been dispensing more of the former. Section 8 had taken the worst of the bombardment. Ceiling panels hung like broken wings, and the artificial gravity fluctuated unpredictably, making debris float in lazy, dangerous clouds. Alex's boots crunched over glass and twisted metal as he methodically cleared each room. That's when he heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound that didn't belong to the settling ruins. Breathing. Labored, but distinctly alive. He followed the sound to what had once been a communications hub. Among the wreckage of consoles and scattered circuit boards, something moved. Alex raised his rifle, finger on the trigger, then froze. A Yavari lay trapped beneath a fallen beam, her chitinous armor cracked and leaking the pale blue fluid that served as their blood. She was smaller than the warriors he'd fought earlier, probably a scout or technician. Her large, multifaceted eyes caught the light from his helmet lamp, reflecting it back in prismatic flashes of fear and pain. She was dying. Alex had seen plenty of Yavari corpses, but never one this close to death yet still alive. Her breathing came in short, desperate gasps, and one of her legs was bent at an impossible angle. Dark ichor pooled beneath her, and her mandibles clicked weakly as she tried to speak. The smart thing, the military thing, would be to put her out of her misery. One quick shot, then report the kill. But something in those alien eyes made him hesitate. Behind the fear, he saw something startlingly familiar. The same desperate will to live he'd seen in human faces on a dozen battlefields. "Easy," he whispered, lowering his weapon. "Easy there." The Yavari, she couldn't be more than 18 in human years, he guessed, tried to scramble away from him, but the beam had her pinned. Her movement sent fresh waves of that blue blood across the floor. Alex knelt beside her, his hands moving, to his medical kit. "I'm not going to hurt you. Do you understand? I'm a medic." She stared at him with those compound eyes, each facet reflecting his face hundreds of times. When he reached toward her wounded leg, she flinched violently. "Shh. I know it hurts." He spoke in the same calm tone he used with wounded humans, though he had no idea if she understood English. "My name is Alex. I'm going to help you." Carefully, he began to examine her injuries. The beam had crushed her lower leg and probably cracked several ribs. Internal bleeding was likely. Without immediate treatment, she'd be dead within the hour. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, applying pressure bandages and injecting her with a broad-spectrum painkiller that should work on Yavari physiology, at least according to the field manual. As he worked, he found himself talking to her, filling the silence with gentle words. "There we go. That should help with the pain. You're going to be okay, I promise." For the first time since he'd found her, the young Yavari stopped struggling. Her breathing steadied slightly, and those prismatic eyes fixed on his face with something that might have been wonder. In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of war, Alex Torres made a choice that would change everything. The abandoned hydroponics lab had become Alex's secret sanctuary. Hidden 3 levels below the main complex, it had escaped the worst of the bombardment, leaving its transparent growing chambers intact, though empty. Bioluminescent fungi, escaped from their containers, provided a soft blue-green glow that reminded him uncomfortably of Yavari blood. "This is insane," he muttered to himself as he carefully lowered the makeshift stretcher. The young Yavari, he'd started thinking of her as Kessa after hearing her whisper what sounded like a name. remained unconscious from the sedatives he'd administered. Getting her here had required every trick he'd learned in 6 years of military service. He'd reported Section 8 clear, then doubled back through maintenance tunnels to retrieve her. The lie sat heavy in his stomach, but not as heavy as the thought of leaving her to die. Kessa stirred as he began setting up a proper medical station using supplies he'd requisitioned from the field hospital. Her eyes opened. Those mesmerizing, compound eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies, and immediately tracked to his movements. "You're safe," he said softly, pulling up a diagnostic scanner. "I need to check your injuries properly now." She tried to sit up, mandibles clicking, in what he was beginning to recognize as distress. The translator device he'd borrowed finally kicked in, turning her clicks and whistles into heavily accented English. Why did you not kill me?" Her voice was softer than he'd expected, almost musical despite the mechanical translation. Alex paused in his preparations. "Because you didn't need killing, you needed help. I am Yevery, you are human, we are enemies. Right now you're a patient and I'm a medic. That's all that matters." He began removing the field dressings he'd applied, revealing the full extent of her injuries. Her leg was definitely broken, and dark bruising spread across her thorax where the beam had struck her. When he gently probed her ribs, she hissed in pain. "Sorry, I know it hurts." His hands moved with professional care, but he couldn't help noticing how different her skin felt. Not the hard chitin he'd expected, but something closer to leather, warm and surprisingly soft in places. "Your people say we feel nothing," Kessa whispered, watching his face intently, "that we are like machines. Your people probably say the same about us." Alex began applying a bone fusion wrap to her leg. "Both sides are wrong." As he worked, she began to relax slightly. The painkillers were helping, but more than that, she seemed to be studying him with genuine curiosity rather than fear. "What is your designation?" she asked. "Alex, just Alex." He smiled slightly. "What should I call you?" "Kessa Cavell 977. She paused. "But just Kessa, if you wish." "Kessa it is." The name felt right on his tongue. "How old are you, Kessa?" 17 rotations. "You?" 24 years. "So we're about the same age." He finished with her leg and moved to examine her torso. "This might be uncomfortable." His hands traced along her ribs, feeling for breaks. Her breathing quickened, but not from pain, from something else entirely. When his fingers found a particularly tender spot, she made a sound that was definitely not distress. Their eyes met, and Alex felt something electric pass between them. He'd been trained to see Yavari as monsters, but looking at Kessa now, really looking at her, he saw intelligence, vulnerability, and something that might have been attraction. "You are not what I expected," she admitted quietly. "Neither are you." His hand lingered on her side longer than medically necessary. "What did they tell you about humans? That you are cold, emotionless, that you kill without thought or feeling?" She reached up with one delicate hand, her fingers tracing the edge of his jaw. "But your hands, they are gentle. And your eyes, they show kindness." Alex leaned into her touch without thinking. Her skin was warm, her touch surprisingly tender. "What did they tell you about touch between our species? That it was impossible, that humans found us repulsive. They were wrong about that too." He caught her, hand in his, intertwining their fingers. The gesture felt natural, right? Despite everything he'd been taught. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other in the soft bioluminescent glow. The war seemed very far away. "I should be afraid of you," Kessa whispered. "I should probably be afraid of you too." Alex's thumb traced across her knuckles. "But I'm not. What happens when your people discover me? They won't. I won't let them." The conviction in his own voice surprised him. "You're under my protection now." Kessa's compound eyes shimmered, tears, he realized with amazement. "No one has ever protected me before." "Well, you've got someone now." He squeezed her hand gently. Get some rest. You need to heal. As she settled back onto the improvised medical bed, Alex realized that something fundamental had shifted inside him. This wasn't just about saving an enemy anymore. This was about saving someone who was beginning to matter to him in ways he didn't fully understand yet. In the growing darkness of Zarian 7's night cycle, two hearts from different worlds began to beat in synchrony. 3 days had passed since Alex had first brought Kessa to the hydroponics lab, and the space had transformed into something that felt almost like home. He'd strung emergency lighting between the empty growing racks, creating warm pools of light that made her chitin shimmer like polished amber. The bioluminescent fungi had spread, painting the walls in soft, shifting patterns that reminded him of a living constellation. Kessa's injuries were healing remarkably fast. Yavari physiology was more resilient than human medical texts had suggested. She could sit up now without pain, and even take a few tentative steps around their hidden sanctuary. Tell me about your world, she said as Alex changed her bandages. They'd fallen into this routine of shared stories, trading pieces of their lives like precious gifts. Earth? Alex's hand stilled on the medical tape. It's green. So green you can't imagine. We have these things called forests, massive collections of plants that reach toward the sky, and oceans that stretch beyond the horizon, blue as sapphires. Kessa's eyes reflected his wonder back at him. We have the deep caverns on Velthar, crystal formations that sing when the wind passes through them. My clutch mother used to take me there before. She trailed off, mandibles clicking softly. Before. What? Before the military conscripted me. Before I learned that the songs were just vibrations in stone, nothing more. Her voice carried a sadness that made Alex's chest tighten. Maybe they're both, he said gently. Vibrations and songs. Science and beauty don't have to be enemies. She looked at him with those mesmerizing compound eyes, and Alex felt that familiar, electric current pass between them. Over the past 3 days, these moments had been growing more frequent and more intense. Your people, Kessa said carefully. Do they choose their own mates, or are they assigned for genetic compatibility like mine? Heat rose in Alex's cheeks. We choose, usually based on connection, attraction, love, if we're lucky. Love. She tested the word, the translator giving it a melodic quality. I have heard this concept but never understood it. It's hard to explain. It's when someone becomes essential to your happiness, when their well-being matters more than your own. Alex realized as he spoke that he was describing something dangerously close to what he was beginning to feel for her. Kessa was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then, with a graceful movement that spoke to her healing, she shifted closer to him on the makeshift bed. Show me, she whispered. Kessa. His voice was rough with warning and want in equal measure. Please, I have never felt connection. I want to understand. Alex's hand found her face, cupping the delicate curve where chitin met softer skin. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. When she opened them again, they held a trust so complete it nearly broke his heart. This is dangerous, he murmured, but his thumb was already tracing the elegant line of her jaw. Everything about this is dangerous. Her hand covered his, pressing it closer. But for the first time in my life, I feel alive. The space between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Alex was acutely aware of every point where their bodies almost touched, of the way her breathing had quickened to match his own. If we do this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, there's no going back. Our species will call us traitors. Then we will be traitors together. Kessa's lips, softer than he'd ever imagined, brushed against his palm. I would rather be a traitor who has felt love than a loyal soldier who has felt nothing. That was his undoing. Alex leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed his lips to hers. She stiffened for just a moment. Surprise, not rejection. then melted into him with a soft sound that was pure music. Her lips were warm and yielding, and when her tongue hesitantly met his, Alex felt like he was drowning in the best possible way. She tasted like starlight and promises, like everything he'd never known he was missing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Kessa's compound eyes were wide with wonder. "That was," she began. "Your first kiss," Alex finished, unable to keep the smile from his voice. "Will there be more? If you want them." "I want everything," she said with startling intensity. "Everything I have been denied. Everything we have been taught to fear about each other." Alex pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. Her head found the hollow of his shoulder, and her arms wrapped around his waist, with a sureness that spoke to something deeper than mere attraction. "What happens when the evacuation comes?" she asked against his neck. "I don't know." He tightened his hold on her. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Outside their sanctuary, the war continued its brutal dance. But inside, surrounded by gentle light and growing love, two souls from different worlds had found something worth fighting for: each other. As they held each other in the soft glow of alien fungi, both Alex and Kessa knew they had crossed a line from which there could be no return, but neither of them wanted to go back anymore. The abandoned observatory on Zerion 7's northern ridge had once tracked asteroid movements for the mining operation. Now, 2 weeks after their first kiss, it had become Alex and Kessa's secret refuge from a war neither of them believed in anymore. Alex had convinced his unit he was conducting extended reconnaissance sweeps, buying them precious hours together while the main forces prepared for evacuation. The massive telescope still functioned. Its lens now pointed not at asteroids but at the spectacular binary stars that dominated Zerion 7's night sky. "Look," Kessa whispered, her voice filled with awe as she peered through the eyepiece. "The blue star. It's pulling material from its companion, creating those spirals of light." Alex watched her profile in the starlight, still amazed by how beautiful she was. Her injuries had healed completely, leaving only faint lines that somehow made her more striking rather than less. "It's called a stellar dance. They're bound together by gravity, each one changing the other." She turned from the telescope to look at him, understanding the metaphor. "Like us. Like us." He reached for her, pulling her into his arms. Over the past 2 weeks, touching her had become as natural as breathing. Her body fit against his perfectly, chitin and soft skin warm under his hands. "Alex," she murmured against his chest. "I need to tell you something. My unit. They're not all dead." He stiffened. "What?" "There are others, hiding in the lower levels. They've been asking about me." Her compound eyes met his, reflecting galaxies of worry. "I told them I was captured, then escaped, but they're suspicious." "How many?" "4, including my clutch sister, Vesa." Kessa's mandibles clicked anxiously. "She knows me too well. She knows I'm hiding something." Alex processed this information, his tactical mind already running scenarios. "Are they planning something?" "A final strike at your evacuation convoy, tomorrow when you move through Serpent's Pass." She pressed closer to him. "Alex, I can't let them hurt you, but if I warn your people directly, they'll know you chose me over them." He understood the impossible position she was in. "What do you want to do?" "I want to run away with you." The words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for days. "I want to leave this moon, this war, everything. I want to find some quiet world where we can just be Alex and Kessa, not Human and Yevari." "That's what I want too." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. "More than anything. But 4 soldiers will die tomorrow if we don't warn someone. Your people might not be my people, but they're still people." Kessa's eyes shimmered with tears. "This is why I love you. Your heart is too big for war." The word hung between them. Love. They danced around it for days, but hearing it spoken aloud made everything real in a way that stole Alex's breath. "I love you too," he said, the words feeling like a prayer. God help me. I love you more than duty, more than loyalty, more than everything I used to think mattered. She kissed him then, desperate and deep, pouring all her fear and love and longing into the connection between them. Alex responded with equal intensity, his hands tangling in the softer areas where her chitin gave way to skin. Make love to me, she whispered against his lips, before everything changes, before we have to choose between love and honor. Alex's breath caught. They'd been building toward this moment for days, every touch and kiss adding kindling to a fire that threatened to consume them both. Are you sure? He asked, even as his body screamed its readiness. I have never been sure of anything else in my life. Her hands found the fastenings of his uniform. I want to belong to you completely. I want you to belong to me. With infinite tenderness. They undressed each other in the starlight. Kessa's body was a study in contrasts. Armor-hard chitin protecting vulnerable softness. Alien beauty that somehow felt more familiar than his own skin. When Alex kissed the hollow of her throat, she made a sound that was pure music. When her hands explored the planes of his chest, he felt like he was being worshipped by starlight itself. They came together slowly, carefully, learning each other with reverent touches and whispered endearments. Kessa cried out when he found the sensitive spots where her chitin met skin, and Alex thought he might die from the beauty of her pleasure. I love you, he breathed as they moved together under the binary stars. I love you, I love you, I love you. And I love you, she replied, her voice breaking with emotion. My heart, my soul, my everything. When release finally claimed them, it felt like dying and being reborn simultaneously. They held each other afterward, skin cooling in the night air, hearts beating in perfect synchrony. Tomorrow, Alex said eventually, his voice hoarse. Tomorrow we save my clutchmates and find a way to disappear. Kessa traced patterns on his chest with one delicate finger. Together, he agreed, knowing they were probably planning their own destruction but unable to care. Love had made them both traitors, and they'd chosen it willingly. As the binary stars danced their eternal waltz overhead, two hearts from different worlds beat as one, ready to face whatever consequences their love might bring. The evacuation convoy stretched across Serpent's Pass like a metallic snake, vulnerable and exposed between the towering rock formations. Alex crouched behind a boulder overlooking the route, his hands steady on his rifle despite the chaos in his heart. Beside him, Kessa remained perfectly still, her compound eyes tracking the movements of her former comrades. They'd spent the night planning this moment, how to save both the human convoy and Kessa's clutchmates without revealing their relationship. It had seemed possible in the starlight, wrapped in each other's arms. Now with dawn breaking over Zarian 7's scarred landscape, the impossibility of their situation felt crushing. There, Kessa whispered, pointing to a cluster of rocks 500 meters ahead. Vesa and the others are in position. They'll wait until the convoy reaches the narrowest point. Alex activated his comm unit. Command, this is Torres. I've spotted Yavari positions overlooking Serpent's Pass. Request immediate tactical support. Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled back. Torres, what's your location? How many hostiles? Alex glanced at Kessa, seeing his own pain reflected in her prismatic eyes. 4 contacts, grid reference Tango 77. He paused, the next words feeling like betrayal. They appear to be preparing an ambush. Within minutes, the convoy's escort vehicles were repositioning, weapons training, on the rocky outcropping where Vesa's team lay hidden. Alex watched through his scope as the Yavari scrambled to find new cover, their ambush ruined. Warning shots first, Morrison ordered over the comm. Give them a chance to surrender. The first barrage sent rock fragments flying, and Alex saw one of the Yavari, a young male he recognized from Kessa's descriptions, stumble and fall. Not dead, but wounded. They're retreating, Alex reported, though his throat felt raw. Falling back to the western caves. Good work, Torres. Maintain overwatch until the convoy clears the pass. As the human vehicles rumbled past safely below, Alex felt Kessa's hand slip into his. Her fingers were trembling. They're alive, she whispered. Wounded, but alive. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate for what he'd just forced her to watch. No. Her grip tightened on his hand. You did the right thing. You saved them from themselves. She was quiet for a moment. But they'll know it was me. Vesa will realize I gave you their position. Which means we can never go back to either side. Kessa turned to look at him, and Alex saw not fear in her eyes, but determination. We're truly alone now. Alex keyed his comm one final time. Command, this is Torres, pursuing fleeing hostiles into the cave system. We'll maintain radio silence to avoid detection. Copy, Torres. Check in when you're clear. He switched off the comm and removed the battery, knowing he'd never check in again. Morrison would assume he'd been killed in action within a few days. By then, they'd be long gone. The supply cache, Kessa said, understanding his plan immediately. The one you showed me in the southern caverns. Enough rations and medical supplies for a month. There's a smuggler's ship in the abandoned port, if we can get it running. They moved through the day like ghosts, avoiding both human and Yavari patrols as they made their way across Zerion 7's broken landscape. The supply cache was exactly as Alex had left it, hidden in a natural cave formation that had escaped the bombing. As they gathered what they needed, Kessa suddenly stopped, her head tilted as if listening to something Alex couldn't hear. What is it, Vesa? Kessa's voice was barely a whisper. She's close. She's been tracking us. A figure emerged from the cave's entrance, tall, elegant, with the same basic features as Kessa, but harder, more angular. Her weapon was raised, but not quite aimed at them. Sister, the newcomer said in accented English, her voice heavy with disappointment. I hoped I was wrong. Vesa. Kessa stepped partially in front of Alex, her body tense. You shouldn't have followed us. Shouldn't have followed the traitor. Who betrayed her own clutchmates? Vesa's compound eyes fixed on Alex. This human has poisoned your mind. No. Kessa's voice was steady, certain. He's shown me what I was missing. What we've all been missing. Love makes fools of us all, Vesa spat. The matriarchs were right to forbid it. The matriarchs were wrong. Kessa took Alex's hand openly, defiantly. Look at us, sister, really look. Does this seem like poison to you? For a long moment, Vesa studied them, the way they stood together, the protective stance Kessa had taken, the obvious love between them despite their different species. You would choose him over your own people? I choose love over hatred, understanding over ignorance. Kessa's mandibles clicked softly. I choose hope. Vesa lowered her weapon slowly. The others, they won't understand. They'll hunt you. I know. And the humans will do the same when they discover his desertion. Alex nodded. We know. Vesa was quiet for a long time, then moved to a supply crate and pulled out a navigation chip. The outer rim, beyond human or Yavari space. There are worlds there, wild, unclaimed, dangerous, but free. She pressed the chip into Kessa's hand. I was never here, I never saw you. Sister, go. Vesa's voice cracked slightly. Before I remember my duty. As they gathered their supplies and prepared to leave, Vesa called out one last time. Kessa Cavell? Yes? Be happy. Be the happiness. The rest of us were never allowed to have. 3 months later, on a world with purple skies and silver seas, Alex and Kessa stood in the doorway of their small cabin, watching the sunset paint the horizon in shades of rose and gold. The smuggler's ship had carried them far beyond the reach of war, to a planet that had never heard of humans or Yavari. Any regrets? Alex asked. his arm around her waist. Kessa leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. Only that it took a war to bring us together. Maybe that's what wars are really about, Alex mused. Not conquest or territory, but finding out what we're really willing to fight for. And what are you willing to fight for, Alex Torres? He kissed the top of her head, breathing in her familiar scent. You. Us. The chance to prove that love is stronger than fear. As the first stars appeared in the alien sky, two hearts that had found each other across the void continued to beat as one, writing a new story among the stars. One of hope, love, and the courage to choose connection over conflict. In the end, they had lost everything their old worlds had taught them to value. But they had gained something infinitely more precious, each other, and a love that transcended species, politics, and war itself. Their story was just beginning.